Think about the last time you shook someone's hand or hugged a friend. It felt warm and solid, right? Like completely real.
Oh, definitely.
Well, what if I told you that you didn't actually touch them? Like, what if I told you that you have literally never physically touched anything in your entire life?
Yeah, it's wild, but the sensation you are feeling is basically an incredibly convincing illusion.
Completely fake.
Right, because when you go to shake a hand, the atoms making up your skin get, very close to the atoms making up the other person's skin. But atoms are surrounded by these clouds of electrons.
Right, the electron clouds.
Exactly. And because those electrons carry a negative charge, they fiercely repel each other.
Is exactly like taking two incredibly strong magnets, like taking the two identical negative poles and just trying to force them together.
Oh, yeah, you feel this intense, invisible resistance.
Right, you can squeeze as hard as you physically can, but the magnets never actually touch. There's just this gap of electromagnetism pushing them apart.
And that invisible gap is always there. So the electrons in your hand repel the electrons in their hand. Your nervous system simply takes that repulsive force, sends a signal to your brain, and your brain interprets it as a solid touch.
Mind-blowing.
It really is. But on a fundamental physical level, there is no actual contact. It's just a collision of fields.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Mhm.
If you are joining us for the first time, our mission here is really simple. We take a stack of sources, articles, books, research, and extract the most important insights so you can be well-informed without the crushing weight of information overload.
Because nobody has time for all that reading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today we are looking at a highly reflective article by Rajesh Chowdhry. It was published on August 24th, 2026, and is titled, "What Makes a Philosophical Model Worth Considering?"
And Chowdhury actually uses that mind-bending reality about the handshake to introduce a much larger work. He talks about a new book called The Eternal Thread, Consciousness, Quantum Field, and the Path to Mukti.
Which was quite the title.
It is. And it's a massively ambitious text trying to bridge hard empirical physics with deep spiritual wisdom.
Which I love because humans just have this relentless drive to ask existential questions, no matter how much science we have.
Right, we map the genome, we build massive particle accelerators, but science usually just gives us the mechanics of how things work.
Yeah.
It leaves us staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning, wondering what it actually means to be alive.
The classic 2 a.m. existential crisis.
Exactly. And to even approach the philosophical model this book proposes, we first have to look at the bizarre physical paradoxes that force us to ask these questions in the first place.
Because the physical reality we live in, like the one we think we understand, is incredibly strange. I mean, we already established that a handshake is just a repulsive force. But let's look at the solid world itself.
Oh, the empty space problem?
Yes. Quantum physics tells us that the atoms making up the chair you are sitting on right now are overwhelmingly just empty space.
It's wild to think about. If you were to scale up the nucleus of an atom to the size of a marble and place it right in the center of a football stadium, the electrons would be like tiny gnats buzzing way up in the highest bleachers.
And everything in between is just a void.
Right, which means the material world you interact with is, 99.99999% empty space.
Which is terrifying.
A little bit, yeah. The only reason your hand doesn't pass straight through a table is, again, those interacting electromagnetic fields.
And then you throw time into the mix.
Yeah.
Because we experience time as this steady, reliable ticking clock. Like a second is a second, no matter what.
Except relativity proves that time is entirely malleable. The universe has this hard speed limit, which is the speed of light.
Right.
And because that speed must remain absolutely constant for all observers, something else has to give when you start moving really fast.
And that something else is time.
Exactly. As you accelerate, time literally stretches and slows down for you relative to someone who is just standing still. So it is not a fixed backdrop. It bends and warps depending on your momentum and gravity.
And if that wasn't enough to make your head spin, there is the massive structural contradiction of life itself.
Right, thermodynamics.
Yes, the article highlights the laws of thermodynamics, specifically entropy. Entropy dictates that everything in the universe is naturally moving from order to chaos. Like, a dropped glass shatters, But a shattered glass never spontaneously reassembles itself.
This raises an important question, right? Because the universe is governed by this relentless direction of decay. It started in near emptiness and is supposed to be spreading out into this cold, disordered equilibrium.
Yet within those strict, unyielding boundaries, we see the complete opposite happening locally.
We do. We see the emergence of incredibly complex structures. Stars forge heavy elements, planets form, DNA spirals into existence.
And us.
Right. The biological human brain, which is perhaps the most intricately ordered piece of matter we know of, somehow evolved.
So how does a universe mandated to decay produce pockets of magnificent conscious order? It's a massive contradiction, and honestly, this is where I start feeling completely disoriented.
It is definitely a lot to wrap your head around.
Right, like, if our basic senses are lying to us about something as simple as a handshake, and if the solid world isn't actually solid, if time bends, and if life is a mathematical contradiction to thermodynamics, how can we trust our understanding of reality at all? I mean, aren't we just flying completely blind?
Well, science brings us right to the edge of that exact cliff. Its tools are brilliantly designed to measure objective mechanics, like the electromagnetic field of that handshake we talked about.
But it completely hits a wall when trying to measure the subjective experience, like shaking the hand of a friend you haven't seen in a decade. Science leaves experiential, subjective reality largely unanswered.
Which is why we turn to philosophy to fill in the blanks. But Chowdhry is not letting anyone off easy here. He argues that not just any philosophical model will do.
Right, if we are going to adopt a framework to understand our place in all this weirdness, it has to pass some very strict tests.
Exactly. He outlines 3 non-negotiable criteria. First, a serious model must rest on a small number of clear principles. You can't just slap together a chaotic grab bag of ideas.
Like one theory for physics, a totally disconnected theory for human consciousness, and then another for morality.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Because the fundamental universe operates on elegant, unified laws, so any philosophy attempting to explain it must also have an elegant, unified foundation.
And that brings us to a second condition, which is arguably the hardest needle to thread. The model must hold both the physical and the experiential sides of reality together without erasing one to validate the other.
What's fascinating here is how rare it is for a model to actually do that successfully.
I know. I was trying to think of how to visualize this struggle, and it's basically like trying to explain love purely through a chemical brain scan.
Oh, that is the perfect parallel to illustrate where most models fail.
Right. A neuroscientist can slide you into an fMRI machine, show you a photo of your partner, and point to the screen saying, look, your dopamine and oxytocin levels are spiking in these specific neural pathways. That chemical reaction is love.
And technically, the physical data is completely real and measurable.
Exactly. But if you walk away believing your love is nothing but a 14% spike in oxytocin, you are missing the actual felt experience of being in love.
You lose the poetry of it.
Right. The scan is real, sure, but the subjective experience of your heart racing and feeling deeply connected is also real.
Yeah, the physical shouldn't erase the experiential, and the experiential doesn't negate the chemistry.
Right. And historically, models swing violently to one of two extremes.
They really do. You have pure materialism, which claims only the fMRI scan is real, reducing all your hopes, fears, and loves to a biological illusion.
Pretty big.
Very. Or you have pure mysticism, which claims only the feeling is real, suggesting the physical world is just a temporary illusion to be escaped.
But Chowdhry argues a worthy model must honor both the objective scan and the subjective poetry. And his third condition is humility.
Yes, a worthwhile model has to remain open to reflection. It should invite rigorous inquiry rather than arrogantly claiming to be the absolute final truth.
It shouldn't shut down the conversation. It should give us a lens to see how these isolated, bizarre questions are actually connected. Okay, so Chowdhry demands a model that marries the fMRI scan with the poetry without erasing either.
Right.
That feels impossible. How does this new book, The Eternal Thread, actually pull that off?
Well, it attempts this by proposing a massive paradigm shift, because we traditionally think of the universe as a giant empty stage.
Right, we see ourselves as passive observers who just wandered into the room to look at the furniture.
Exactly. But the Eternal Thread argues that reality is not a dead, fixed stage at all. It is a living, participatory process.
And true to Chowdhry's first rule, keeping it simple, the book boils this entire paradigm down to just 2 foundational principles. But before we get into the laws, the article keeps mentioning the quantum field.
Ah, right. We should clarify that.
Yeah, so to make sure we aren't just throwing around buzzwords, we need to clarify what that actually means in this context.
It is essential to define that. So In quantum mechanics, particles, which are the building blocks of reality, don't exist in a fixed, definite state when they aren't being interacted with.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they exist as a wave of probability.
So they aren't actually physical things until we look at them?
Pretty much. It is only when a particle is measured or observed that this wave collapses into a single, definite reality.
Oh, wow.
This is famously known as the observer effect. The quantum field is that underlying sea of infinite potential and probability.
Which leads perfectly into the book's specific mechanics. The first core principle they propose is the law of conservation. In standard physics, thermodynamics tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form.
Right. And the book scales this up to say that nothing essential in the universe is ever lost. Every action, every thought, every physical event leaves a trace. Patterns accumulate over time.
So it provides the mechanism for continuity. Everything is conserved.
Exactly. But the second law is where the model completely breaks new ground, tying that quantum field directly to human consciousness. It is called the law of realization.
Okay, what does that one do?
This principle states that new possibilities within that field of potential emerge and solidify specifically through attention, awareness, and participation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, at least for me. Because when I read about this law of realization, my mind instantly went to video games.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, think about a massive, modern, open-world game. 10 years ago, the computer had to render the entire digital world at once, which crashed the system because it took way too much processing power. But modern game engines are much smarter.
Right, they use dynamic rendering.
Exactly. The environment only fully materializes in high resolution when the player's camera, like their awareness, is actually looking at it.
So the software essentially waits to decide what the physical environment looks like until you direct your attention there.
Yes. If your character is looking at a forest, the trees are fully rendered, the leaves are blowing, the light is filtering through the branches. But the massive castle 3 miles behind you...
It's not actually there.
Exactly. It isn't fully physically rendered. It just exists as a block of potential data in the code, waiting.
That is a great way to think about it.
It only becomes a tangible interacting environment when you turn your character around and look at it. The game world is a participatory feedback loop with the player.
And the eternal thread is basically arguing that the universe operates like a cosmic version of this engine. The quantum field is the potential data, and our conscious attention is the camera that forces that potential to render into a realized state.
Yeah. The analogy actually holds up remarkably well against quantum mechanics, doesn't it?
It really does. The book is taking the observer effect, that idea that awareness forces reality to pick a definite state, and applying it to our macroscopic lived experience. Our attention is the catalyst that collapses probability into reality.
Okay, I have to push back here, though, because this is where models usually lose me. Like, a cool video game analogy is fun, and bridging quantum mechanics is neat, but the book applies this law of conservation, this law of realization, to everyday psychology.
It does, yeah.
For instance, the article talks about karma. Now, traditionally, we think of karma as this mystical Santa Claus keeping a cosmic naughty and nice list.
Right, like a system of divine crime and punishment.
Exactly. And the book reframes karma as simply the law of conservation in action. It says your thoughts, your reactions, and your choices are patterns of energy that accumulate.
Right.
But wait, conservation of energy applies to literal, measurable thermodynamics.
Yeah.
How can you legally apply rule of physics to something as fleeting as a bad mood or a jealous thought?
It's a fair question.
Just sounds like the pure mysticism we've literally just criticized.
Yeah.
How does a thought act as conserved energy?
Well, that is the exact necessary challenge, and it's where the book's bridge between the physical and experiential is actually the strongest. Because a thought is not just a mystical floating cloud. A thought is a highly specific physical event.
Oh, you mean like in the brain?
Exactly. When you feel a burst of anger, electrochemical signals are firing across synapses in your physical brain. And through neuroplasticity, the more you fire those specific pathways, the physically thicker and faster they become.
Ah, like carving a groove into a record.
Precisely. You are physically conserving that pattern. Now combine that macroscopic physical change with the quantum field. Your brain is a dense network of interacting electromagnetic fields.
Okay, I'm following you.
So If the law of realization is true, if your attention acts as the camera rendering reality from the quantum field, and your camera lens is physically grooved to focus on anger or fear.
Then you are continuously collapsing the probability of the universe into an angry, fearful reality.
Exactly. It isn't a mystical punishment, it is just psychological physics.
Wow. It takes the magic out of it and replaces it with mechanics. If you constantly direct your attention towards suffering, you are continually rendering a suffering reality for yourself. You are conserving that pattern, and it dictates what your camera renders next.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely reframes the spiritual concept of mukti, or ultimate freedom, that the book's title refers to. In this framework, freedom isn't escaping this physical world to go to some magical heaven.
So what is it then?
Mukti is the profound, sobering realization of your own participatory nature. It is recognizing that you are the one holding the camera.
You realize the game engine is responding to you, so you can finally step out of the automatic, unconscious rendering of your own suffering.
Exactly. It asks us to stop viewing our lives as passive victims of circumstance and to start seeing ourselves as active, responsible participants in a living field.
And what I deeply appreciate about this model is its stance. It doesn't ask you to throw away science. In fact, it requires science to work. It needs neuroplasticity and quantum mechanics.
Yes, it leans on them.
But it also doesn't dismiss traditional spiritual insight. It offers a companion lens, like an invitation to a different way of seeing that you have to test through your own lived examination.
And the true value of the eternal thread isn't about forcing you to believe its specific mechanics. I mean, even if you walk away fundamentally disagreeing with its conclusions, the model succeeds if it shakes you out of a passive worldview.
Right, it succeeds if it forces you to look at that gap between the fMRI scan and the poetry of your life and just ask better questions.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, it means that if this model is even pointing in the direction of the truth, you are far more responsible for the reality you experience than you might have previously thought.
That's a big realization.
It is. The cold, hard laws of thermodynamics and the bizarre behavior of quantum physics are fundamentally stitched together with your deeply personal experiences of joy, suffering, and freedom.
Because the universe isn't just happening to you, it is happening with you.
It is a profound shift. The observer is intimately entangled with the observed.
It really is.
And we are going to continue pulling on this specific conceptual thread in future deep dives, which is actually a perfect transition. Because if these ideas, this intersection of science, philosophy, and consciousness are resonating with you, I want to invite you to subscribe to our podcast for the next episode.
Oh, definitely.
In fact, moving forward, the title of this show is officially The Eternal Thread. We are going to serve as an ongoing companion to these exact kinds of inquiries, exploring the edges of what we know and what we experience. So make sure you are subscribed to The Eternal Thread so you don't miss where we go next.
I am incredibly excited for where this goes. And before we close out today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds directly on what we just discussed.
Let's hear it.
We talked extensively about the book's law of realization, right? The idea that new possibilities literally emerge and solidify through our attention and our awareness. But if our attention is the camera that renders the quantum potential into a physical reality, what does that mean for the physical and spiritual quality of our world today?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. We are living in a moment where human attention is more fractured, more commodified, and more relentlessly distracted by glowing screens than at any other point in history.
That is so true.
So if our collective attention is constantly jumping from one meaningless micro-distraction to the next, never settling, are we accidentally realizing a permanently fragmented reality?
Wow. That is a heavy, necessary question. If touching a hand is just a collision of fields, what happens when all our fields are tuned to static? We will leave you with that to think about. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Stay curious, watch where you point your attention, and we will catch you next time on The Eternal Thread.